You think of a friend you haven't spoken to in years, and suddenly your phone lights up with their name. You keep seeing the same number on license plates, receipts, and clocks, over and over, until it feels like reality itself is trying to get your attention. Then, out of nowhere, an opportunity appears at the exact moment you need it, something that makes no logical sense. These are the kinds of events people call synchronicities. Many dismiss them as random chance, yet deep down you've always felt they carry weight, a pattern, a whisper of something larger at play. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, was the first to name this phenomenon. He called it meaningful coincidence. But even Jung admitted that synchronicities seem to break the rules of how we think reality should work, because how could two events with no direct causal connection line up so perfectly that they create a sense of divine timing? Science calls this impossible, but quantum physics suggests otherwise. In the quantum field, reality doesn't unfold in a neat linear chain of causes and effects. Instead, all possibilities exist simultaneously, waiting to be observed, waiting to collapse into your experience. And when you are in resonance with a certain possibility, it begins to leak into your awareness in ways that look like synchronicity. It's like the universe flashing you previews of a reality that's not fully here yet, what we could call your shadow reality. These shadows aren't illusions. They are echoes of something real, vibrating at the edge of your perception. Think of it this way. Before an object appears in front of you, it casts a shadow. You may not see the object itself yet, but the shadow reveals its shape, its form, its presence. Synchronicities are the shadows of your quantum reality. They are the first signals that the timeline you've been vibrating with is already forming, already aligning, already waiting for you to fully step into it. But here's the paradox. Most people misinterpret synchronicities. They either brush them off as coincidences and ignore them entirely, or they cling to them with desperation, turning every little event into a superstition. And both reactions block the actual manifestation from coming through. So why do synchronicities happen in the first place? To answer that, we need to zoom out and understand both the science and the spirituality behind them. Neuroscience shows us that your brain is a prediction machine. It constantly filters billions of pieces of information down to what matches your focus and your expectations. This means when you start tuning into a certain frequency, for example, abundance or love, your brain literally begins to highlight external events that match that vibration. You notice more of what you're already aligned with. But here's the deeper truth. Your brain isn't just passively noticing. It's actively entangled with the quantum field, pulling forward experiences that resonate with your internal state. This is why people who live in fear seem to constantly notice fearful events, and those who embody gratitude seem to stumble upon blessings everywhere. It's not luck and it's not random. It's resonance. And the more coherent your internal state becomes, the more undeniable and precise your synchronicities get. That's why seeing repeating numbers, hearing the same phrase from multiple sources, or encountering opportunities that just happen are never just surface events. They're your shadow reality trying to show you, look, it's already here. Stop doubting. Stop waiting. Step into it. Now here's the open loop that will change how you see this forever. Synchronicities are not the end of the journey. They're the beginning. They aren't the prize. They are the breadcrumb trail leading you to the reality that already exists, waiting to be embodied. The shadow is not the destination. It's the invitation. And when you learn how to recognize it, trust it, and act from the vibration it's pointing you toward, you unlock the doorway to a full quantum shift. Stay with me because in the next part, I'm going to show you the real mechanics behind synchronicity. Not just Jung's psychology, but the quantum physics that explains why it happens and why it's always a signal that your next reality is closer than you think. 2. Understand synchronicity at a deeper level. We have to leave behind the old Newtonian model of reality, where cause and effect are linear, predictable, and measurable, and step into the quantum paradigm. In Newton's world, coincidences are meaningless because everything is supposed to be a chain reaction. A falling domino knocks down the next. A push causes a movement. A thought has no business shaping the external world. But quantum mechanics shattered that certainty. Experiments from the double slit all the way to quantum entanglement have shown us something radical. Reality is not built like a machine. It is built like a field that responds to observation, intention, and resonance. When physicists fire single particles through two slits, those particles behave differently depending on whether or not they are observed. Without observation, they spread out as a wave, existing in every possible position at once. With observation, they collapse into a single location. This is the observer effect, and it tells us something extraordinary. The act of noticing literally changes what becomes real. Now apply this to synchronicity. The reason certain events line up in ways that defy logic is not because of chance. It's because your consciousness is already tuned into the wave of probability where those events exist. The moment you give attention to that wave, it collapses into your lived experience. But synchronicity doesn't stop at the observer effect. It also draws from quantum entanglement. Two particles once connected remain linked, no matter the distance between them. What happens to one instantly influences the other. This non-local connection means that events in your external world can be entangled with your inner state in ways that bypass space and time. That's why you think of someone and they suddenly call. That's why you dream of an opportunity and it shows up the next day. It's not random. It's entanglement manifesting across dimensions. Carl Jung, sensed this decades before modern physics caught up. He wrote that synchronicity was a principle of a causal connection. Meaning events were linked not by physical cause, but by meaning. Meaning itself was the bridge between mind and matter. And today neuroscience gives us even more insight. Your subconscious filters out most of reality. But when you enter a heightened state of awareness, whether through meditation, emotion, or intention, your brain stops suppressing those subtle connections. You begin to see the pattern that's been there all along. What was invisible becomes undeniable. Here's the key. Synchronicities appear most often when your internal vibration is shifting. They are indicators of coherence. Imagine your thoughts, emotions, and body as instruments in an orchestra. When they are out of tune, the sound is chaotic and you feel lost. But when they align into coherence, the resonance carries far and wide. The quantum field responds to that harmony by reflecting it back to you through external events. Those external reflections are synchronicities. They're the universe echoing. Yes, you're in tune. Keep going. The danger, though, is misinterpretation. Many people fall into the trap of chasing synchronicities as if they were the goal itself. They see repeating numbers and think this is the miracle. But the numbers are not the miracle. They're the signal. Just like a compass is not the destination. Synchronicity is not the manifestation. It's the shadow of the reality forming in your field. If you stop at the shadow, you miss the actual object. Another common misstep is treating synchronicities like tests from the universe, as though missing one means you failed. But the truth is, simpler and more empowering. Synchronicities arise naturally when you're aligned, and they fade when you fall out of alignment. They're feedback, not judgment. A mirror, not a scoreboard. If you stop seeing them, it doesn't mean you're cursed or punished. It means it's time to reattune your frequency, to come back into coherence. And here's where the real shift happens. When you start engaging with synchronicity consciously, instead of brushing it off, you pause. You breathe. You acknowledge that your shadow reality is brushing against your present one. And in that pause, you ask yourself, what state within me is being mirrored here? What reality is asking to be embodied? This transforms synchronicity from a random event into a navigational system. Suddenly, you're not just wandering through reality. You're being guided by it. This is why synchronicity has been described as the language of the universe. It's not the universe speaking to your logical mind. It's the universe speaking to your energy, your intuition, your higher self. The more you learn to recognize the mechanics, entanglement, coherence, observer effect, the more you see that this isn't superstition. It's physics. It's consciousness interacting with the field. And the more you accept that, the more fluent you become in that language. In the next part, we'll go even deeper. Because if synchronicity is your shadow reality, then the question becomes, how do you step out of the shadow and into the full embodiment of that reality? How do you collapse it into the now? The answer lies in a simple but powerful shift of perspective. One that turns synchronicity from a mystery into a tool. When synchronicity shows up, most people treat it like a fleeting spark. Magical in the moment, but forgotten just as quickly. They see 11 to 11 on the clock, bump into an old friend at the exact right time, or stumble upon a book that answers the very question they've been struggling with. And then they smile. They feel a little wonder, and they move on. But what if synchronicity wasn't meant to be a passing curiosity? What if it was designed as the entry point into a deeper reality? Synchronicity is not the manifestation itself. It's the shadow of your future brushing up against your present. And the real work is learning how to collapse that shadow into substance. In quantum physics, the wave function describes all the possible states a particle could occupy before it is observed. It exists in superposition. Many states at once, all equally real. Synchronicity is like catching a glimpse of that superposition, as if your consciousness tuned briefly into a version of yourself where the desire is already real. The repeating numbers, the chance encounters, the perfectly timed song on the radio. These are all signatures of a probability wave trying to collapse into form. If you ignore them, the wave dissipates back into the field. But if you meet them with awareness, intention, and alignment, you give that probability permission to become the reality you live in. Carl Jung hinted at this when he spoke of synchronicity as a psychic parallelism. He believed that these events were not causal, but a causal linked not by cause. An effect, but by meaning. Meaning is the bridge. The moment you infuse a synchronicity with meaning, you collapse it into your timeline. You transform what could have been a coincidence, a catalyst. But this requires more than a fleeting recognition. It requires a state of coherence between thought, feeling, and body. Let's bring neuroscience into the picture. Studies on neuroplasticity show that your brain literally rewires itself based on what you repeatedly focus on and feel. When you notice a synchronicity and then pair it with an elevated emotion, gratitude, awe, trust, you're programming your nervous system to recognize and anchor that new reality. You're training your subconscious to align with the timeline where that reality exists. In Joe Dispenza's words, neurons that fire together wire together. By consciously engaging synchronicity, you're wiring your body and mind to expect the extraordinary. And in the quantum field, expectation is not passive. It's magnetic. Now here's where most people miss the leap. They think the synchronicity is telling them what to do. But it's not about instruction. It's about reflection. A synchronicity doesn't say go left, not right. It says look, you're in resonance. It's less a roadmap and more a mirror. And when you shift from asking what does this synchronicity mean to asking what state within me is producing this synchronicity, that's when you step out of the shadow. That's when you embody the version of yourself who already lives the outcome. Quantum mechanics gives us a perfect metaphor for this. In delayed choice experiments, particles seem to retroactively decide their path based on how they're observed in the present. In other words, the future choice influences the past outcome. Applied to your life, this means the reality you step into today can rewrite the story of yesterday. A synchronicity is not predicting your future. It's showing you a reality that is already available if you choose to embody it now. The choice is not about action first. It's about alignment first. This is why synchronicity often feels so dreamlike, as though reality itself is bending. In those moments, you are touching the liminal space between timelines. You are standing with one foot in the shadow and one in the light. The question is, do you lean back into the comfort of the old, or do you step forward and let the shadow become real? The field will not force you. The field will only mirror you. Spiritual teachers, like Neville Goddard, understood this long before quantum mechanics gave us language for it. He taught that imagination is not fantasy. It is the seed of reality. When you imagine yourself as already being the person who lives the synchronicity's message, you are collapsing the future into the present. You're no longer waiting for the sign. You're becoming the one who the sign has been pointing to all along. Here's a practice to turn shadow into substance. The next time a synchronicity happens, pause. Instead of asking, what does this mean? Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and feel into the state of the self who already lives inside that reality. If the synchronicity was about love, embody the feeling of already being loved. If it was about abundance, embody the feeling of already being supported. Hold that state for 90 seconds because neuroscience shows it takes at least that long for the emotional signal to imprint into your nervous system. In that moment, you're not just noticing synchronicity, you're collapsing it into form. And remember, the shadow is always ahead of the light. Synchronicity is not lagging behind your reality. It's leading it. It's the preview, not the replay. By choosing to engage with it consciously, you're stepping into the preview and saying, yes, this is mine. This is now. In the next part, we'll explore why synchronicity doesn't always feel smooth, why sometimes it disappears, stalls, or even turns chaotic, and why that disruption may actually be the clearest signal that your reality is about to shift. There's something most people never talk about in the world of manifestation and synchronicity. What happens when the signs stop showing up? You may have been seeing repeating numbers everywhere, feeling aligned encounters at every turn, hearing songs on the radio that spoke directly to your situation, and then silence. No more signs, no more synchronicity. It can feel unsettling, almost like the universe has turned its back on you. But what if that silence isn't rejection? What if it's the final stage before the shift? In quantum mechanics, before a particle collapses into a specific state, it enters a liminal zone, a kind of probability haze, where it could become anything. That haze is unstable, but it's necessary. Without it, the collapse into form cannot occur in your life. The absence of synchronicity plays the same role. It's not that the field has stopped responding. It's that the field is recalibrating, aligning the probabilities, preparing to lock in the version of reality you've been resonating with. This quiet phase is not the end of your manifestation journey. It's the threshold. Neuroscience offers another lens. The human brain relies heavily on predictive coding, meaning it constantly anticipates patterns based on past experience. When synchronicity floods your awareness, it trains your brain to expect the extraordinary. But right before a leap, those old predictive codes get disrupted. Your nervous system temporarily enters uncertainty. It feels uncomfortable, even empty. But that discomfort is not failure. It's the rewiring in process. It's your old neural maps dissolving so the new ones can take root. Carl Jung also pointed to this phenomenon in his exploration of synchronicity. He noticed that meaningful coincidences often came in clusters, bursts of alignment followed by periods of quiet. Those gaps weren't random. They were integration periods. Think of it like the inhale and exhale of manifestation. Synchronicity is the inhale, the drawing in of energy, alignment, and signals. The pause between breaths is the silence where your system stabilizes and your reality prepares to exhale into form. If you panic during the pause, you disrupt the flow. If you trust it, you anchor the shift. Spiritually, this silence can feel like a dark night of the soul. Old identities loosen. Familiar anchors fall away. You may feel unseen or unsupported, but the truth is the opposite. The silence means you're closer than ever. The field doesn't give you silence to punish you. It gives you silence to test your resonance. Will you cling to old doubts? Or will you stand in faith even without external proof? This is where your quantum signal becomes the strongest, because it's not being reinforced by external signs. It's being generated purely from within. Here's the paradox. Synchronicity vanishing may actually be the most powerful synchronicity of all. It's the field saying, you've received enough previews. Now it's time to live the reality without training wheels. And the way you respond in this quiet phase determines whether the jump locks in or dissolves back into potential. If you respond with doubt, you signal to the field that you weren't ready. If you respond with trust, you send the clearest message possible. I am already aligned. I don't need the signs to know. It's real. That's when the collapse happens. And this is where I want you to pause and really integrate this truth. Because if you're in that silent phase right now, wondering why the magic seems to have disappeared, it could be the clearest evidence that your quantum jump is near. The silence is not absence. It is compression, energy gathering before release, the bow pulling back before the arrow flies. So, here's what I invite you to do right now to seal this awareness. Write in the comments below, not as a ritual, but as a declaration, these words, I trust the silence before my shift. When you put those words into writing, you're not just engaging with this video. You're sending a vibrational signal to your subconscious, your nervous system, and the field itself. You're saying, I no longer fear the pause. I recognize it as the passage. And the field always responds to declarations made in alignment with truth. Because here's the secret. Synchronicity is not proof that you're on the path. It's a reflection of the state you're in. And the silence, that's the ultimate reflection. It's the space where you get to prove to yourself that you are already aligned even without external evidence. And the moment you embody that, the evidence returns tenfold because it no longer needs to convince you. Now let's move deeper. If synchronicity is the shadow and silence, is the threshold, what comes next is the crossing, the moment when you stop chasing signs and start living as the signal itself. Most people spend their lives scanning the world for signs. They wake up and check the clock hoping to see repeating numbers. They wonder if a stranger's comment or a song on the radio carries a hidden message meant for them. And while synchronicities are real, powerful, and often beautiful, if you stop at the sign, you miss the destination. The quantum field doesn't want you addicted to clues. It wants you to become the signal, because when you embody the vibration fully, the universe no longer needs to send previews. You're already living the main event. Think of it this way. Synchronicities are like breadcrumbs left on the path. They reassure you that you're heading in the right direction. But breadcrumbs aren't the meal. They're not the fulfillment of the journey. The real shift happens when you stop picking up crumbs and instead become the one baking the bread. That's what it means to become the signal. Instead of waiting for reality to confirm who you are, you begin to radiate your identity. So strongly that reality has no choice but to conform to you. Physics can help us see this clearly. In experiments with quantum coherence, when particles are entangled, they don't wait for external signals to align. Their state is already shared. They're the signal. In the same way, your consciousness can either operate as a seeker of alignment, constantly asking for reassurance, or as the source of alignment, radiating coherence into the field. When you reach this state, synchronicity doesn't disappear, but it changes. It stops being random bursts of reassurance and becomes a constant resonance with everything around you. You walk into rooms and they feel different. People mirror your vibration without knowing why. Opportunities flow not as accidents, but as inevitabilities. Neville Goddard often taught that the true creative act is living in the end. That means embodying the result before any evidence appears. It's not about waiting for signs. It's about becoming the one who no longer needs signs. When you live in the end, you are the sign. The mere fact that you exist in coherence sends ripples through the field, drawing the corresponding timeline into collapse. Joe Dispenza's research also supports this. When people enter heart-brain coherence in his workshops, external synchronicities skyrocket, not because the universe suddenly decided to respond, but because they had become the resonant signal the field needed. Spiritually, becoming the signal means transcending the duality of waiting versus receiving. You no longer look at the world as a separate entity that must deliver to you. You see yourself as the projector of the world you inhabit. Just as light doesn't wait for a surface to shine, it shines and the surface responds. Your frequency doesn't wait for signs to align. It radiates and the field arranges accordingly. This is what sages across traditions have meant by embodiment, faith, surrender, and knowing. It is not blind belief. It is the deepest kind of certainty, being the vibration regardless of appearances. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop looking for signs, you enter the most powerful relationship with synchronicity. Because, at that point, synchronicity no longer appears as hints to reassure you. It flows as natural extensions of your state. You stop asking, "Is this a sign?" and start living as if every breath, every step, every moment is a confirmation. This is what mystics meant when they spoke of walking in grace. It's not about extraordinary events sprinkled across your timeline. It's about your entire timeline becoming extraordinary because you've tuned yourself to the extraordinary state. But how do you do this practically? You start small. The next time you feel the urge to search for a sign, pause. Instead of asking the universe to prove itself, ask yourself, am I aligned right now with the version of me that already lives this reality? If the answer is yes, breathe into it, embody it, and let that state radiate. If the answer is no, don't panic. Realign through breath, through thought, through emotion. When you catch yourself in doubt, remind yourself, I don't need signs to know who I am. I am the sign. Imagine what your life would look like if you no longer treated synchronicity as a fragile miracle that might or might not show up, but instead recognized it as the natural overflow of your coherence. Imagine waking up in the morning not wondering what signs you'll see today, but knowing that you are the one broadcasting signals into the field, and that reality has no choice but to reflect them. That is the shift from being a seeker to being a creator, from chasing to radiating, from waiting to embodying. And this is why the disappearance of synchronicity we spoke of earlier is so crucial. The silence is the invitation to stop looking outward and start radiating inward to become the source. Because once you do, the game changes forever. Life stops being a puzzle of clues and starts being a mirror of your deepest essence. So the question is not, will you see the signs? The question is, will you become the sign? Because the moment you decide that you are the field has no option but to agree. By now, you've likely begun to feel it. That subtle shift in perspective where synchronicity no longer seems like a random wink from the universe, but instead reveals itself as the echo of your own vibration. This is the turning point. You are not a passive observer decoding cryptic signs. You are the very source of those signals. And the sooner you embrace this, the sooner you stop searching for meaning outside and start radiating meaning from within. That's when life ceases to be a scavenger hunt for clues and transforms into a living dialogue with your own higher self. Think of it this way. Synchronicity is training, wheels for the soul. It appears when you need reassurance, when you're still building trust in your connection to the field. But once you embody the deeper truth that you are the signal, the need for reassurance fades. You don't look for patterns. You become the pattern. You don't wait for hints. You are the evidence. This is what it means to live as the creator, to accept that the external world is only reflecting the coherence you already embody internally. Deepak Chopra once said, "Coincidences are not accidents. They are signals from the field of infinite possibilities." But here's the next layer. When you live in coherence, you no longer see coincidences as rare gifts. You experience them as the natural flow of a reality aligned with who you are. They stop being rare events and become your daily rhythm. And in that rhythm, struggle dissolves. You're not trying to interpret cryptic codes. You're simply being. And being is enough. Quantum research supports this. Studies in quantum biology show that coherence is what allows even living cells to function in harmony, transmitting information instantly across vast systems. Your nervous system works the same way. When you are fragmented, thinking one thing, feeling another, and acting from fear, the signals you send into the field are scattered. Synchronicities, when they appear, feel random and inconsistent. But when you unify your state, thought, emotion, and body in agreement, you emit a frequency so coherent that reality reorganizes around it. That's why alignment feels like magic. It isn't magic, it's physics. So the invitation is simple, but not easy. Stop chasing signs. Stop waiting for external validation. Begin radiating your identity so strongly that synchronicity is no longer necessary as reassurance. It becomes simply the overflow of your presence. When you do this, your life becomes not a series of fragmented moments stitched together by chance, but a coherent masterpiece, authored by your consciousness. This is the highest expression of synchronicity, not scattered signs, but a continuous stream of resonance. And if this message resonated deeply with you, if you're ready to not just understand, but embody this shift, the more coherent, clear, and radiant you become, the more inevitable your quantum shift. You are not decoding shadows anymore. You are projecting light. And from this place, reality doesn't trickle in as occasional synchronicities. It flows as a continuous, effortless manifestation of who you have chosen to be. So step fully into that. Say it with me internally. I am the signal. Let that vibration anchor into your breath, your body, your field. From this moment forward, don't wait for the universe to whisper. Speak with your frequency and let reality respond. Until the next video, stay radiant, stay aligned, and never forget. Synchronicity was never random. It was always you.